Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. Enough to Keep Going podcast, excuse me. Episode number 243 for Thursday, May 26th, 2022. I almost said Wednesday. I thought it was Wednesday. Thank you. Thank God it's not. It's been a long week, as you can tell. Tonight, we have one Mr. Game Logic with us. Game, how's it going tonight?
Good, as good as can be expected with the kind of week that the world has had, but we are here to podcast and talk about games, and so hopefully we'll be able to keep that going for our regularly scheduled time and topics.
Yes, definitely. So unfortunately, DBQ could not make it tonight. Hopefully he will join us again next week. But let's get started here. And unfortunately, Game Logic, I'm going to have to ask you to go because I don't have any gaming stories today, at least at the start. So it looks like you've been playing a sports game, actually. How are you finding some baseball?
Yeah, it's been pretty neat. So the last few weeks, DBQ and I have talked, and you and I have talked a few times about how I'm just kind of in this continuing pivot about, what I'm going to play and kind of what's going to be, in heavy rotation. And I talked to DBQ about the fact that I had kind of picked, settled down on a number, the number being 3 of, the kind of, battle pass, season pass kind of games that I can keep going at any one time. What that really has meant is that, I include in that bucket kind of what I call these long form games. So things that have like career seasons and franchise seasons and things that really take a lot of soak time, right, for me to be involved in. And that includes baseball. So with the wrap up of Destiny 2 Season 1, I've kind of rotated what I have had in heavy rotation. And so I've had, it was Halo Infinite, Destiny 2, and Warframe were kind of my big games for kind of calendar year 22 Q1 was kind of what I was digging on. And, with the wrap up, like I said, of Destiny 2 Season 1, I pivoted those. And so this season, this quarter or whatever, in heavy rotation, I'm going to be playing other stuff, but in heavy rotation is going to be Dirt 4, Halo Infinite, Destiny 2. I'm going to keep in the rotation because I paid for a year's worth of, Battle Pass, Season Pass, or whatever. But also in that rotation is Super Mega Baseball 3 because Dirt 4 and Super Mega Baseball require just kind of the same time-oriented approach as is necessary for a Battle Pass. So Super Mega Baseball was what I kind of pulled off the shelf for the first time this past week. I've had it in the backlog for a while. It was actually, it first caught my eye because it came to Nintendo Switch. It had been on PC, I think, for a while before then. But when it got queued up to come to Switch was when I really took note of it. And I agonized and vacillated and never got around to picking it up on the Nintendo Switch before I moved the Switch upstairs and went all PC. But when I went to all PC, I said, hey, I have to find something to replace MLB The Show. And, at that time, which was a PlayStation exclusive, and I had to find something to replace the NHL series, because those are the 2 sports series that I tend to play every year. Sometimes I mix FIFA into that now, since about 2018, but I haven't necessarily grabbed that every year, or at least have not spent a lot of time with it. But I did find that I had, picked up MLB The Show every year. So Super Mega Baseball is what is my baseball fix on PC. That studio has, of course, been acquired by Electronic Arts, so that's now technically an EA game. I expect to see more variants of some type of baseball game to go into the EA portfolio, is kind of what I suspected that acquisition was about. But Super Mega Baseball is not dressed, dripped, and adorned with the typical EA, microtransaction, ultimate team kind of stuff. So it's just a straight up version of baseball, and it's really enjoyable. It doesn't provide all of the complex nuances that MLB The Show does, but I think that's okay. That was a bit of a cognitive overload on MLB The Show, and there were definitely lots of features in MLB The Show that I didn't really participate in. So Super Mega Baseball has been out since, I think, spring of 2020, so it's about a 2-year-old game. It is not necessarily a graphical powerhouse. The game seems to be capped at 60 frames per second. I threw an RTX 3060 Ti and 64 gigabytes of RAM and an AMD Ryzen 5 3800X at it, and I wasn't getting anything more out of it than 60 frames per second, which is fine. It's not a super speedy game. Fielding is a little frustrating because it feels like there's no ability to kind of sprint with your players. And I think that maybe kind of keeps fielding a little bit simple, but it also makes it incredibly constrained to get to the ball if you don't pick up on it like right away. I find that it is not as helpful as MLB The Show in kind of auto toggling the fielders to start moving in the direction of the ball. Like I said, particularly given that you're not particularly fast. So I mean, if you're not putting that person like in the zone of where that ball is coming down, you're just not going to get to it. But I think it's a game that's predominantly about pitching and hitting, and not maybe as much about fielding. Advancing runners and getting runners to hold up is pretty simple. Those are on the bumper buttons. So managing that is pretty simple. There doesn't seem to be a ton of stealing. So when the opposing team has people on base, it's not a big fret X to worry about constantly looking over at them and making sure that they're not leading off too far on base. And I would try and throw them out, a couple times. It never seems to be particularly effective, so I think it's just about kind of forcing them to not take a big lead off. But I will say, they move so quickly though at the first hit of the bat that like when there's a person at third, if that first baseman, if that batter, gets on first base, like that's going to be a score. There's no way to like move quickly enough to cut them off. So there's some artificialities in it that bug me just a little bit, but kind of more so in my kind of OCD fashion of like wanting perfection rather than like really bugging me. The pitching game is tight. It takes a little getting used to, but once you get used to it, there's some nasty junk on those balls when you throw them across the plate, kind of in their last split second of movement. That really provide a lot of excitement. And what I enjoy most about baseball is pitching, and really about baseball video games is pitching in that kind of chess match between you and the batter, and just constantly keeping them guessing about what's coming next. And I enjoy playing the kind of the textbook stuff and giving them the change up twice in a row, and then suddenly hitting them with the fastball and that catching them off guard. So it's good. It's co-ed, so there are female and male model players in the game with no differentiation between their skill sets. So
Nice.
I enjoy that. And it has a roster model. So as much as I enjoyed the game on the field, because it's not as over adorned with a lot of the stuff that MLB has, it was pretty simple. I went in and kind of mixed up the lineup and kind of line up the batting order the way that I prefer. I have a particular kind of algorithm that I use of having my best three batters leading off the order, in increasing rank of 3, 2, 1, and then I have my worst batter come up in fourth, and then and then go up from there 4, 5, 6, and then I have what would wind up being my fourth best batter in at 4, and then sliding off to 5, 6. So it's kind of accordion of a batting order that I typically set up. So I was able to do that fairly easily, and perhaps the most interesting piece is I never really got around to monkeying a lot with team management in MLB The Show, but again with Super Mega Baseball 3, it was intuitive enough that I was immediately after the first game able to go in and understand the free agent roster, and I couldn't afford. With sports games, I always follow this pattern of I always recruit talent, and then I figure out like where I'm going to put them position wise and how that's going to affect my team, rather than recruiting for position. So I found the second best person. I couldn't afford the first best person, who was available for free agency, so I grabbed the second best, who was a second baseman. I had a good second baseman, but not a great third baseman, so I actually picked up the free agent, moved them to be my second base starter, took my second base starter, and moved her over to third base. And then now she's also one of my the second baseman that I moved to third base is also one of my best hitters, so I definitely wanted to keep her in the lineup. I didn't want to move her to my backup second baseman. And then after all that, my third baseman was also better than my backup second baseman. So the way the rules work with their recruitment, when you bring in a position player, you have to release a position player. So out of all that, and the way I looked at the kind of stacked rankings, it was the reserve second baseman that I needed to let go. So I moved them off, kept the third baseman, but moved her to reserve. And like I said, put both of those second basemen in my lineup. So that was neat. I mean, that's a big reason of like what I really enjoy about sports games and playing. When I used to talk about Madden, you guys have heard me talk before how I really just played those 16 games in the season so I could get to the off season and really do the team management and do the college recruiting and stuff. It was really just all about like playing the season as quickly as I could so I could play, the coach and general manager in the franchise mode in the off season. So there's a little bit of that in baseball, in the middle of the season. And it's nice to be able to play a game, where I can access that and it feels like it's not a hassle. And then finally, because it's not real baseball, I will readily admit I was always very fixated with MLB The Show on playing the full length of the season, and so what that meant was I never finished the season. But because this is like straight up in your face fake baseball, the playing the shorter seasons doesn't bug me as much. So I'm playing a 32 game season, which seems manageable and reasonable if I'm playing it in kind of the same kind of battle season pass approach that I do. Other games of that ilk. So it's going pretty well. Had a really good experience with it so far.
Nice. So, and this is the one where the characters are kind of like they're not not super deformed, but they're obviously not like realistic. Right?
It's cartoony, right? I mean, you're a comic book guy, like I'm a comic book guy. Like if you've read books that have like cartoony art rather than kind of that kind of realistic art, then that's kind of how they are. They're kind of not quite bobbleheaded, but not super realistic facial features and kind of blockier body styles. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I think I don't think I've never played it, but I know I've seen it I've seen it on sale a bunch of times and stuff like that. So it's interesting. And I want to say like the game style is more like an NFL blitz, but I know you're talking about how you can obviously do a season and stuff like that. But is there like kind of more exaggerated like plays and stuff, or like stuff like that? Or
I mean, not other than like the animation of the kind of weird like of the cartoony bodies, just kind of naturally plays out that way. But it's not like you're not
going to throw somebody out from like the outfield or anything like that, right?
Yeah, right. It's not EA Sports Big or NFL Blitz or any of that kind of craziness, right? Where like there's flame trails on the baseball or anything like that. But it's in that style and it's kind of looking in that direction, and that's kind of, I mean, my big thing that I question and that I kind of hope is that in bringing this team aboard, that I'm hoping that the shoe that we see drop from EA is that they're bringing that EA Sports Big label back and that they'll have these guys do it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I have to. I don't think I've ever seen that on Game Pass or anything, but I have to check it out.
Yeah, no, I don't even know. I'm not even sure if it's on Xbox and PlayStation. Yeah, it might just be on PC and Switch. I'll look that up at some point during the show. I mean, because it would compete against MLB The Show, and I mean, there's just really no. I mean, if I had the choice between MLB The Show and this, I would play MLB The Show. So I just don't know that it would be able to compete really directly.
Yeah, and these are all like totally just made up teams, right? The names.
Yeah, totally made up teams, totally made up leagues. I mean, you can overwrite that stuff and make a custom franchise of your own and make the real the real MLB baseball teams and you can go in. I mean, I think it has a logo creator where you can create logos, so you could, if you wanted to meticulously, painstakingly recreate your old MLB, you could, but of course we all know that's not why I play video games, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who has done that and is interested in doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure you can check YouTube and find that out. So, all right. All right, so let's jump on to the news, and then if I can give you a break, I'll kind of skip your first couple news segments here, and I'll jump down to number three so you can check things out here. But and I think DB put this story in because I know I didn't, and I don't think you did. So Activision Blizzard story here, nothing bad, I guess you could say. I mean, I guess your point of view of where you're looking for, looking at this from. But Raven Software, and this is from Game Industry Biz. Raven Software QA Group becomes the first U.S. major video game union. So they did unionize, and kind of the timeline here, and I'll kind of go through it a little bit quickly. And this is in the article. They're saying this is reported from Polygon. Raven began the efforts to unionize back in January, as about 78% of the testers voted to form a union, and then asked the parent company Activision Blizzard to recognize the group. Raven's staff moved its union efforts forward without being recognized by Activision Blizzard, because obviously they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to okay it. Excuse me. At that point, the company then announced a structural change among its employees, the move embedding QA report workers within each department of the division, which at that time, back in January, could have potentially jeopardized their union. And then in February, we have a Slack channel message from the Activision's vice president of QA saying that the unions could hurt our ability to create great games. We move over to March, where I think it's Axios reported that Microsoft, which was poised to purchase Activision Blizzard, would recognize the Game Workers Alliance if Activision Blizzard happened to go forward with it. And then last month, from the Washington Post, the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, rejected Activision's objection to not recognize the Raven Software QA group. And then finally, this happened on the 23rd, where I guess it became official that they were gonna unionize. So, and then an update a couple days later, or 1 day later, from a spokesperson provided a statement regarding the QA group's unionization vote. We should respect and believe in the right of all employees, and this is a direct quote, we respect and believe in the right of all employees to decide whether or not to support or vote for a union. We believe that an important decision that will impact the entire Raven Software studio, roughly 350 people, should not be made by just 19 Raven employees. So that was the last update they gave in this article. And then the initial report from Jason Schreier from Bloomberg said that the vote was 19 for the union and 3 votes against. So there was a few people there that didn't want to go through with it. But looks like it's official. First union is a QA group. So I don't know. Is this a huge deal? Is this a big deal? Do we see this kind of like maybe kind of thing sweeping across the game industry? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Too hard for me to tell. I just, I mean, it's clear from the behavior that we've seen in the games industry and from the employers and developers and development studios and publishers that some manner of labor relation reform is needed in the games industry. There's just the industry is making money hand over fist, but there's a ton of bad that's going along with it. And I just am not, this is the thing that I wish we had DBQ here for. I'm just not enough of a, labor relations historian to really fully grasp whether or not this is us kind of teetering on the edge of a revolution in the industry that's going to significantly change its face. I'd have to go back and look at, I kind of have some semblance of how like guilds and unions came about in the movie industry, and how, they came about, but I'd have to look at things about how they came about in like the sanitation industry and some other particular ones. But, the problem is the gaming industry is this weird place that is in this crevice between tech and entertainment, and there is no prevalence of unionization within the tech industry, right? So, and another big problem is it's kind of weird, and I will readily admit I don't fully understand this dynamic as well, but there's a larger number, maybe percentage of kind of what I do not think of as a developer, um, in terms of domain expertise and skills within the gaming industry. Like I don't like an artist to me is not a developer. A there are certain roles that um, are not a pure straight stick software developer, and so one of the things that may be going on here too is that I really wish we would get the information. And this is kind of the problem I have when somebody like a Jason Schreier or somebody who's really not a technical domain expert reports this stuff, because I don't have a sense. A state in the tech industry very, very, very frequently. In fact, I often run into this, and it's a thing that has to be managed. Is the software developers, like the actual people who write code, the people who are hands-on keyboard, are often kind of your premier employee set, and have a set of privileges and lead in existence that is definitely different than, I would say, for instance, a tester. Right, way different than a tester, way different in terms of where they top out in their careers, way different in how they are compensated. And then you have today, because of the emergence of automation, you have a significant difference between a tester and a test engineer, right? So what I don't understand, because the media doesn't report it, because the media doesn't understand, is when we talk about a lot of how people are treated, and I try to get a semblance of like who's happy, it's often hard. I'm realizing now it's difficult to tell whether or not we're talking about people writing code on a keyboard, or if we're talking about people in other ranks, like testers and test engineers, and artists, and people who are doing like IT work, right, that supports the development team. Those people, I get a sense, could be treated vastly differently, and are compensated on way different ends of the pay scale. But when the media reports that, they just lump and dump them all into this generic label of developer, and that's not. I don't know that that's the way it is. So, so quite frankly, I mean, given that whole spiel, I don't know that you're going to see a big wave of unionization if the software developers are not part of that, right? Because they carry a bulk of where management and leadership's concern is going to be. I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it, because I tell my employees that it's a thing to understand and a thing to be realized, right? As a tester, you're not part of the premier domain skill set, so you need to understand where you kind of line up, right, within the hierarchy, and how valued of an employee you are, and how to read signals on like when it's time for you to choose to go somewhere else. I mean, I hate to say it, but like I'm not gonna jump out of my chair when I hear necessarily that a tester is a flight risk as quickly as I am when I hear that one of my, software engineer twos or software engineer ones, right, is a flight risk in talking about leaving, because one of them is more replaceable than the other. Um, and so, it all depends on kind of where this trickles down and out and horizontally too, I think.
Yeah, I know. Like, there's a few different podcasts that I listen to, and some from like major, uh, online publications or sites, uh, and these are just like the staff writers and the reviewers and just other people within the company, how they are always champion for unionization. And then, but then if I see something else like on a forum or like on Twitter or something like that from like a developer, they're kind of against it. So it's kind of that battle. You like, okay, you get the one side where the people are like, yeah, unionization, but they don't work in the industry, and they see it from the outside, obviously. So, and they might just be reading articles, like you said, they'll read articles like this, and you might not get the whole picture. Or like you said, they're just dumping everybody into one class basically. And then you get the other side where it's the actual developer, and and they're saying something different, where they're actually on the inside. They're actually working and doing these different things. And I've seen this not as far as like unionization, but the kind of the hierarchy, just at jobs that I've worked at, because I'm in IT, and I don't know. I guess I can kind of see like both sides, just because just from like knowing people too that have been developers and stuff like that. Obviously, besides even you, it's just kind of hard that And I think it just depends on the place you're at too, like how you're getting treated in the first place. Like, I mean, if you're getting treated like crap, like yeah, you want something better for yourself, whether it's a union or just just better whatever within the company. So I don't know. I guess it's just a hard thing to say either way without excuse me, without kind of experiencing that. So, but anyways, any other comments before we move on here?
No, just to kind of foot stomp about what the stuff you just ran through, right? Like, I mean, you know, sys admins, right? Once you have the requisite number you have to have, any extras beyond that, right, are people who don't have as much job security potentially, right? Network engineers, right? You really need your high end network architects and cybersecurity folks and stuff in that field. Your network security personnel, but your very generic kind of network administrators, like it gets, they have a different degree of traction and anchor, right? And so in all these conversations, if what's coming over from like a Schreier article and other articles is that the people who are for unionization, as you mentioned, right, when you hear it echoed by the media, but then you go on a developer forum and you see something different, the people who have a clear path and target line to six-figure salaries, right, the people who come in at high fives, those people aren't going to be interested in unionizing, right? And doggone sure, without question, that includes people who are in the code writing camp, right? People who are in that domain are going to come in at high five-figure salaries. They're going to have a very clear target line to six-figure salaries, and a lot of them, that target line is nothing but putting in time, right? Just sticking around for that long. And so if that's one demographic pool, and then the other pool of testers, sysadmins, your IT personnel who provide like all the infrastructure and resources and stuff, if that's and graphic artists and stuff, if that's the pool of people who are for unionization, and it's dependent on those two kind of different ends of the demographic pool coming together for this thing to really take off, that's just unlikely to happen, So I don't know then what the industry would do about getting people on one end of the pool to kind of hypercharge that movement in without being coupled to, right, because to me the thing that would break the industry and the thing that would force companies to the table would be these sharpshooter developers and code writers who have to come in at like a certain point of the program. Like there's a small percentage of these people that kind of roll around the industry and get recruited to come onto programs to carry them over the last, kind of midterm points of software development, right? To really get them to the shipping point. And if you don't have people in that kind of upper echelon, if you don't have your really high performers from your marquee employment pools, from a skill set perspective, it's going to be tough to drive the industry to a point where, corporations are kind of forced to the bargaining table to have that discussion. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely something we'll be watching it. Obviously, we'll see what happens going forward. All right. Did you want to jump into your PC talk there, or Computex?
Yeah, I will do the best that I can. So Computex is an annual event that's going on over in Taiwan right now. It is kind of, I would think, it's kind of one of the big summer events for PC technology. I think there's another one, I want to say later in the summer, and then there is, it's not CES, but there's another event that's typically happened in the fall. Although with all the reduction in shows that fall, So there used to be like MWC for which focused on there used to be CES at the beginning of the year, MWC in the spring, and then there's Computex, and then there was another mobile show later in the fall also, and that's where kind of like your fall phones would be debuted, your Samsung Galaxy Notes and your Google Pixels and other kind of big phones in the summer, in the late fall. But I don't know if that second mobile show goes on anymore. And I think Computex is it. Although, like I said, I think there's one that goes on late summer, but I'm not absolutely certain. But out of that show, there's been a smattering of technology discussions and details that have dropped out that would be appealing to the PC gaming crowd, or at least something to keep your ears perked up to. One of the big ones was AMD's announcements, and so we've been hearing about AMD Ryzen. I never know how best to refer to these things, because it used to be Intel that used to have the really goofy, stock model number sequencing or serialization. But now AMD's is getting just as bad. So I think AMD has gone to the structure with Ryzen where the odd numbered model series are your desktop parts and the even numbered model series are your laptop parts. And that used to not matter when AMD used to not be able to sell laptop parts in any volume, but they're actually gaining a lot more traction. And so now these numbers pop up more frequently, and I'm like, whoa, wait, it's like, what the heck is that thing? So, on mobile, there have been the Ryzen 4000 series CPUs, and now the 6000 series CPUs will be coming out. They're also putting out a part called Mendocino, which is their mobile part. There was a point where AMD was making some inroads into smartphones, but that doesn't seem to have really taken off. But it may be back now with Ryzen. I'm not exactly sure. But the most pertinent part of this is the 6000 series laptop parts. I have seen a lot more traction from those for gaming PCs, much more so than there have been in the past. But the other really big news is their 7000 series Ryzen CPUs will be coming out. I want to say, I don't know if yes, fall of 2022. So the upcoming Ryzen 7000 series desktop processors with the new Zen 4 architecture promises to deliver a significant increase in performance upon their launch in fall of 2022. Now, with the Ryzen 1000, 2000, and I want to say 3000 parts. And this whole even odd thing didn't start really until 4000. So the 2000 series were desktop parts. 1, 2, and 3000 series Ryzen processors were desktop parts. So, but then they skipped. 4000 was not on desktop. 5000 is what's on desktop today. So, with 1000, 2000, and 3000, the way it worked is those CPUs hit the market, and they were pretty readily available. I think the only thing that maybe has trailed is the availability of motherboards for those parts did not always come out. I want to say when they first launched Ryzen, it was AM4 socket motherboards were not in as much prevalence. But the thing, of course, that since Gen 1 that's been great is that pretty much almost all of those boards have gotten BIOS updates, and so many, many, many boards. I wouldn't say as far back as your 1000 series supported boards. But, in many cases, I was able to update my motherboards that I bought for 1000 series Ryzen processors so that they could run my 3000 series processors. And in fact, when I upgraded to 3000 series processors, I did not have to upgrade motherboards. I just grabbed BIOS updates and upgraded the motherboards and haven't had to buy a new motherboard since. It's only been since getting my 5000 series Ryzen part that I needed to get a new motherboard. So the Zen 4 architecture of the 7000 series CPUs will require you to go get another motherboard. They are moving to a new socket called socket AM5. That socket, as far as I can tell, definitely for your enthusiast boards, maybe not across the entire parts list, but definitely on the up front when these things launch, they are only going to support DDR5, and I want to say PCIe 5 as well, maybe 5 and 4. I'm not absolutely certain. But basically, okay, so no, this is PCIe 5.0. So when you get these boards, you're going to have to get the latest and greatest, SSDs, NVMe SSDs, and you're going to have to get the latest and greatest RAM. And so it's going to be expensive. But, Ryzen parts typically tend to run at a price premium, I think, at a good budget price in comparison to equivalent Intel parts. I'm sure AMD is going to push that in order for these parts to get out into circulation. The other thing that looks really interesting about these 7000 series CPUs is it seems to return back to hopefully good heat generation numbers. So I think their top end processors will run at 170 watts, and I'm hoping that they've done a good job of providing. I wouldn't call them budget parts, but I would say mid-grade parts that run at like 65 watts TDP, and so they don't generate a lot of heat and they don't need a ton of power, but they provide a great degree of performance, kind of in that Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5 level. And then when you get up to Ryzen 7, you get up to 170 watt parts. In the past, there have also been some 95 watt parts that, again, have, you've been able to cool them with less than an AIO or all-in-one water cooling setup. With these 5,000 parts, I mean, even my 5600X, which is a mid-grade part, it is not a Ryzen 7, it's a Ryzen 5. It runs really hot with just air cooling, and so I've moved to water cooling for Intel parts, and I'm moving to water cooling for AMD parts as well. But I'm hoping that with this series of processor, we'll see parts that you can again go to comfortably air cooling in a gaming PC. And so a lot of these things have been rumored for a while, but this was the official announcement. Another big thing that's coming with these processors is you're going to get smart access storage. So we've talked a lot about the Xbox and its Velocity architecture and direct storage. Both NVIDIA and AMD are putting out variants of direct storage that are branded to their specific CPU architectures and chipsets. I forget what the I think the NVIDIA one is called RTX-IO, and then the AMD version of that is I want to say, what is it? Smart Access. I thought I just had it.
Smart access storage.
Smart access storage, yeah. Maybe I closed there. Yeah, RTX-IO, yeah, and smart access storage. And so these are going to be technologies that will theoretically allow your GPU to grab assets directly from high-speed storage drives. So, I believe that it'll allow it to access it for NVMEs. I don't think this will work across SATA, but it basically will cut out the middleman of the CPU in a lot of cases and allow, assets, levels, texture packs, etc., to be grabbed directly from an NVMe SSD and brought straight onto the GPU, which will obviously accelerate load times and help with performance, in game. So that is one of the most exciting kind of architectural technologies that I've seen since the beginning of console generation 9. And I know that that Microsoft, because of the way that they're structured and the way they're built, they have been baking that into the DirectX stack, and so they were eventually bringing it over to PC. And the nice thing will be for AMD, because they tend to open source their drivers, is hopefully we would theoretically see that technology also made available on Linux gaming PCs, and so eventually making its way onto something like the Valve Steam Deck, because Valve has said that this is going to be a continuing line of SKUs, and they're planning on putting out upgraded versions, as they go along their roadmap that will eventually incorporate additional functions. So, like I said, hopefully we will eventually see that in the Steam Deck. We also got some other things during Computex, some new SSDs that run at 13,000 megabytes per second transfer speeds. I suspect that you only see those in very, very high-end PC applications, but eventually they will trickle down. NVIDIA, really kind of quiet at this Computex. They also recently released their earnings report, and things were not as rosy. Kind of heralding the predictions of a slowdown of the GPU industry. So we'll see. So a lot of what NVIDIA had to report was new features and implementations in the GeForce Xperience, their RTX drivers. But one of the things that they are supporting now, and we actually have some reports of some vendors actually rolling out, is 500 hertz G-Sync gaming monitors. So I think Asus reported that they were putting one of these out. Yeah, they've got a Republic of Gamers Swift 500 hertz G-Sync monitor. I'm not sure if they dropped a price for that. I am expecting. I mean, it's a 24-inch panel, so again, these high refresh rate monitors are kind of a thing that that on the industry landscape kind of came along and changed the name of the game, where the increasing upper end of GPU performance was kind of oriented around, and what people wanted most was 4K and high speed 4K. But now there has been this thing of where, maybe 4K isn't the best gaming experience. I don't play in 4K anymore. I was one of those people, I thirstily and hungrily chased 4K, and then I was like, this is not that great. And so I've settled down on focusing on 1440p. But when I want to play competitively, when I want to play Call of Duty, Halo Infinite, Fortnite, I go to a 24, 25-inch 1080p high-speed monitor at 120, 144, 165, 240 hertz monitors. I have not gone for like a 360 hertz monitor. To me, that's been a little much. My GPUs where I run tend to, I have a few games that will max out a 240 hertz display. But I just, at this point, I hardly see the need for going to a 500 hertz monitor. Unless you're future proofing, I guess that could be a thing. But I'm suspecting that this is going to be somewhere between, I don't know, a $1,500 monitor or above when it comes out. But it says it's a 24-inch, so maybe it'll just be something up at like the $750, $800 range. We'll have to see. Again, I have a hard time imagining any practical applications for that. So that was most of kind of what was seen at Computex. I'm trying to see. Gigabyte also dropped some things, but I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out at me. I think they had another 500 hertz monitor as well. So exciting times. The thing I'm most excited about is the AMD announcements, because that will drop a bunch of parts on the gaming landscape this fall. That will definitely, hit in the area of where I need to be doing some upgrades. I may not be able to hold off that long, but it's always good to see the advancement of technology march on. And of course, there's discussion. I guess they didn't. I think maybe they've already announced that their 7000 series Radeon cards are coming out, and of course, we know NVIDIA is putting out their 4000 series cards. So there's been a lot of speculation from people that these console generations are going to be extended, and I have been very skeptical that that's what's going to happen. And what we're seeing in the PC side is that the march of technology goes on, pandemic or no, lost years or no. I highly suspect that we're going to see the same thing in the console industry, because they're going to have to follow suit, since their parts are kind of trickle down from PC parts. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. You're muted if you're talking. Sorry.
Sorry, thought I had unmuted. So I know in the past that, like, when you had consoles and you were buying consoles, then you might do that again in the future, but you usually would get them fairly close to release, if not on release day or release window. For PC stuff, and I can't remember because it's been a while, but do you usually try to jump on stuff like right away, or do you wait a little bit on PC components? Whether it's a video card or a CPU or something like that.
It's really a matter of like opportunity and time. So what I have is I have the builds that I have in the studio. They all have. I keep in a in a productivity app. I keep like a sheet or a record that has upgrade time, recap, refresh timelines in it. I don't religiously hold to those. I think I'm at a point now where whereas in the past I used to just be like, the earliest I can upgrade is here, but then I would upgrade at any point after that. I wouldn't feel compelled to upgrade when I hit that line. Now I'm starting to enter the mindset of like, okay, when that tripwire trips, I'm going to upgrade sometime within 3 months. After 3 months of that trigger being hit, I'm gonna do a mandatory upgrade. Just because like I got into this space where I needed to upgrade parts, but there were certain dependencies I had to meet first, like in particular with the recent round of GPUs. I was just at a point where I had to upgrade power supplies to even accommodate those GPUs first, before I could even buy those parts. So I'm trying maybe not to get to that state again, because that was a whole kerfuffle. And there were also some things where like I had a high end CPU in a box that was older, and I didn't want to upgrade. I didn't want to upgrade the oldest box. Like there was a point where it was the oldest box. I didn't want to upgrade it because it was the more powerful CPU. So I had to wait, right? I forced myself to wait until that box hit a certain tripwire date before I upgraded other, so it was a whole thing. But really, if I'm going to upgrade when these parts drop, it's really just a matter of kind of what the state of boxes in the studio is. So when the GTX 1000s came out, I upgraded immediately and got GTX cards right as that generation started, with the 1000 series cards. And actually that was the card that brought me back into building PCs. Because before that, during the whole 600, 700, 800, 900 series cards from NVIDIA, I was like, these cards are fine on a laptop. There's no real need to like build a PC for that. I also young kids at that point, I was like, I'm not building a PC just so some kid can like roll in here and knock a PC over. And at that point, we were in a house where I had like my own isolated computer room. But then when we moved here, I was like, okay, I can start building PCs again. With RTX cards, I didn't jump on them right away because I was waiting for prices to come down. I didn't see the games that were incorporating those technologies. I wasn't as wrapped around about it. With the 3000 cards, I waited even longer before I got those. So much to the point where I don't normally buy TI cards, but I actually just went ahead and got and got a TI card. I did a 3060 Ti and a 3070 Ti because I had waited so long that I was just like, there's no point in me getting like the baseline card. So, being with where I am now, I'm probably not going to get a 4000 series card because I just recently upgraded to a 3000 series. And I'm not ready to jump on a 7000 series Radeon card because I have one box in here that has a 6000 series Radeon card. But I will say, there are points of the year where I get very unhappy with AMD drivers, and I was just about to buy an NVIDIA card to get rid of like the only Radeon card that I run in the lab now. I used to run 2 Radeon cards. There's a point where I was running 3 Radeon cards in the lab, and I got rid of 2 of them because the driver situation was just driving me nuts. So I've fixed and restored one that still runs a Radeon card and convinced myself that I don't need to replace it, but it's getting the hairy eyeball, just waiting for it to, screw up one time. And if that happens when 4000 series cards are out, then I might make that move. Sorry, that's a very long answer, but highly situational.
No, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, since I just got this PC, I don't know what I'm going to do going forward. Like when stuff, starts going out, or I just, I see something new coming out. So I'll probably just swap out parts for, in the future. But
all right.
So
are you running your older PC as a dedicated streaming PC, or do you stream?
No.
When you stream from a PC, so you game and stream on the same PC?
I will. I still haven't done that yet. I still haven't done any streaming yet on this machine. So I don't think I'll have a problem if I do that. But And then before, obviously, I didn't have PC that could do that, so I didn't really play a lot of PC games. So I was just doing my Xbox or Switch. I might still probably do that the majority more, do the console streaming, and obviously this would be my streaming PC. But I still have yet to test like playing a game and streaming off the same one. So we'll see how that works.
So
especially if it's a higher end, something graphic intensive.
So when you stream from console, do you use your PC to stream?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean that's just a thing, I might consider is if you were going to decide you were going to get in the market for a 4000 series card, and if you have the power supply, to power it, it may be worthwhile to consider getting a 4000 series card, upgrading the PC that you just got, taking that 3000 GPU and building, a cheaper budget PC around it, just to use it as a dedicated streaming PC. So, I mean,
yeah, it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Always a thing to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely have to think about that. It's a good idea. All right, let's jump up to the next. If you want to take the next one too, it was the V Rising story.
I will actually. Do we have any other news? Because I'll actually just cover that when I talk about V Rising.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll jump over to the one I had put in there. So this is a PlayStation story, oddly enough. So the president of Sony's PlayStation business has said the company expects half of its annual releases to be on PC and mobile by 2025, and this is coming from the video game chronicle.com. Speaking at a business briefing on Thursday, it's actually today, so I just got this news story today. SIE President Jim Ryan said that expanding to the larger platform, and committing to releasing at least 12 live service games in the coming years could be transformational to our business. PlayStation Studio historically has executed wonderfully in the delivery of strong portfolio of narrative-rich and graphically beautiful single-player games, but it's certainly the case that we have restricted ourselves to a rather narrow portion of the gaming market, Ryan said. And then he goes on to say, how they want to expand, obviously, obviously more into the live streaming services. I believe that was, I don't know, a few months ago, maybe when they had announced that they had 12 live service games that are being developed within the various, PlayStation studios. And then, obviously by 2025, they want to have, jump into PC and the mobile market, which I didn't. Let me see if it was in this article, if it was a different one, where they mentioned, I don't know if they had like a studio. No, I don't see it. They were talking about Nix's software. That's actually which helped with working on PC versions of Square Enix games. But I thought there was another studio that they had mentioned. Maybe it was in a different article I was reading about like mobile stuff. Because I think right now they don't really have any mobile games, right? I think they had a Final Fantasy game maybe that they had released not too long ago.
I can't remember. I want to say, and I didn't dive super deep into this. Or I want to say that what he said was they would be looking at outsourcing that, but then eventually that they also would be doing their own mobile game. So I just can't remember if they've stood up a mobile studio at this point or if they're looking to acquire one.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about this because as far as the PC side at least, I know I bought Horizon Zero Dawn, the first one, on the PC. Probably will buy God of War when it comes out, if it hasn't come out already. I can't remember.
Yeah, it came out in January, so I've got it on PC. And having played it on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC, there is absolutely zero question about the fact that the best place to play that game is on PC.
Yeah, so and obviously, like I don't have PlayStation, haven't had 4 or 5, so this is a great opportunity for me to play their exclusives. So that's definitely a good article. That's why I want to throw it on there, just because I wanted to see that. So they initially had Horizon Zero Dawn back in 2020, Days Gone last May, and then God of War. There it goes. And then they have Uncharted 4, Thief's End, and Lost Legacy coming up, making the jump to PC at some point. They didn't give like a date or anything in this article, but those are coming. I really wish they would put Spider-Man on PC, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So, because I always enjoyed the previous iterations of Spider-Man games, and that was probably like the one game that if I was going to buy a PlayStation, that would be for that one, just because I've always enjoyed those. So, um, oh, I think this is what I was looking at. So, SIE had appointed former Apple Arcade content boss Nicola Sebastiani to lead the company's mobile operations. I think that's what I was looking at. That's what I was thinking of. So he's going to kind of oversee the mobile side of the PlayStation. So
Yeah, I think it's a woman, and I think
oh, okay,
what she was in charge of. I can't remember if it's what she said, but it's what she was in charge of was Apple Arcade.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, okay, all right. So and then in that same kind of paragraph, they say uh, lead the company's mobile operations. Following job ads that stated it was opening a new business unit to adapt. There you go. To adapt its most popular franchises for mobile. Okay. So yeah, there we go. So that's interesting though, because like I said, I mean, mobile. I do play mobile games. Obviously, I'm always jumping into Rocket League, and there's some other games like Pokemon Go, but I never. I don't know, like when they're going into the mobile market, if they're thinking, mobile games like just these fast, kind of quick games, or if they obviously want to try to do, because they say they want to bring their most popular franchises to mobile, but are they going to do, like a full-fledged, or maybe full-fledged for a mobile game, like adventure game like Uncharted or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they bring those over, because obviously we've seen Nintendo, they do their thing. I think Fire Emblem is probably one of their biggest ones, along with was it Dragonalia, I believe is how you say it, which was that was kind of a new property, but they've had other ones on there that kind of hit or miss. Uh, so it'll be interesting to see how they bring their properties over to the mobile side. Any comments on this article?
Yeah, I mean, I think this will be great. I mean, I think from a mobile perspective, I hope they see. I mean, the problem with mobile is Nintendo tried it and it wasn't particularly successful for them. Or at least wasn't successful enough for it to be interesting. And I think what I want to say they learned from that is when they tried to do kind of the quick kind of low end thing like they did the Mario Endless Runner thing, and I don't think that particularly stuck very well. I think what was best for them was like you mentioned Fire Emblem, but even then, still that sold, but I don't know that it made a ton of money. And like I said, enough to keep them sufficiently interested. So, but regardless, what I would hope is that what Sony tries to do is mobile in the PlayStation kind of way, which means their higher end game and kind of premium kind of content on mobile. I think there's room for that in the mobile space. I think so much of the mobile space is kind of bargain bin, bottom of the barrel, get rich quick schemes that I think there's space in the mobile market to appeal to the high end gamer, with premium experiences that are here's my game, buy it for $10, buy it for $20, and I'm not going to hit you over the head with a bunch of microtransactions and gimme along the way. It's just here's the game. It's a 20-hour, 15-hour, 20-hour experience, with a linear story to it, not just a bunch of kind of matches and levels. So I think there's room for that, and I hope that's what Sony's trying to go for. For their games on PC, I was involved in a discussion about this today. I think somewhere in that article it talks about their goal is to release those concurrent, so it is a discussion about bringing those day and date on PC. While God of War unquestionably plays the best on PC, I suspect the same is true for Horizon Zero Dawn. Days Gone got an entirely new lease on life on PC, radically different critical acceptance from the consumer community on PC in comparison to its uptake on console. But that all being said, those three games have not sold in volumes that really move the needle for a company like Sony. So that's the only worry. But I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they released 2 years late, and PC gamers who are barraged with a high number of games each year that it's literally impossible to kind of sift through. I think when they come out at a $60 at a 50, I think they've been at a $50 price. I think I only paid like $50 for God of War. But I think the impression just is that it's it's Sony's leftover meatloaf, right? And people tend to not maybe want to pay upscale prices for those. So I think releasing them day and date will, even if they, quickly go on sale and wind up being sold at $50, hopefully they'll sell in enough numbers to really kind of move the needle, and it would, I think, be an uplift to them in the marketplace if you suddenly have, your console players, but also an addressable part of the PC market now all of a sudden having a conversation about those games on social media. So, yeah, all good. It would be interesting to play, some of these games closer to their first release. Now, again, that being said, I'm the type of gamer where I don't care. Like, I was completely fine playing God of War on a 2-year lag. I have plenty of stuff to play between 2018 and 2022, right, or whenever it came out. Like, the delay didn't bother me at all. But I think for other parts of the market, I think this will be a good move for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it wasn't in this article; it was another article I was looking at earlier today too. They're mentioning how, and I think this is just like a rumor thing. Like somebody saw something on a page or somewhere, but like Returnal was maybe going to be on PC at some point. So, which is I guess one of their bigger titles this past year. So,
yeah, I haven't seen the article personally myself, but mutuals of mine on Twitter, I've seen them discussing it as if it's been officially announced somewhere. So that might be the case.
Yep.
That all being said, I ain't playing no roguelike.
Yeah, so we'll see. All right. So let's jump over. So it's the end of May, and it is time for our Picks Plays report outs. So we were exploring the metaverse for this past month. At the most basic, this can be where we're trying to see if there's a key voice actor or famous actor, being incorporated into a mocap or into a game or some kind of, LTE or LTM. So real quick, I just want to say something on DB's choice. He was going to do Warzone because they were doing the Godzilla versus King Kong crossover thing for this season or this portion. And I did try to play this a couple times actually. Granted, it was kind of later at night Central Time Zone, and it was probably past midnight or something. But I couldn't find a game. Like I could never get into a game, so I don't know what was going on there. And it was like 2 different weekends I tried, so I don't know if I was just having bad luck that day. I just played, I think maybe Fortnite or maybe Rocket League, like something else that was online. I was jumping into games right away. So I don't know if it was just Warzone or what was going on that night or those nights, but I could never find a game, and I think I was just probably playing trios because I usually pick trios for most of the battle royals now. So I don't know. It was kind of weird that I couldn't find any games that night or those nights. So looks like you had Destiny 2 that you were trying out. So if you want to tell us about that.
Yeah, I phoned it in for this one, so I didn't go, way out of my way to participate in the assignment. But I deliberately put that low end of minimum participation in there, and I definitely capitalized on that. So I did. I played Destiny 2 and have finished up the Witch Queen, and have been going back to follow to get into a bit of the post campaign content. Of course, now the new season is out, and it's got some new narrative adventure in it, and as Destiny 2 always does, that will be jammed right in your face at the front end, and so there will be no way to bypass it. You can eventually get out of the mission, but I know actually it's the next thing up in my queue, so the new season started today, if I'm not mistaken, and I am certain when I load the game and select my character, I will be met with the cinematic for Season 2, the season of... I had just looked at it, and I forget what it is called. But it's got some famous, well-known kind of voices in it. Obviously, we have Lance Reddick still in there as Zavala, but specifically, what was rolled into this season is I don't know how many people remember Brett Dalton. So for people who were fans of Agents of Shield. Brett Dalton was the I guess he was the I can't even remember what his character was called, but he was the traitor in the midst who was actually working with gosh, help me out. He passed away. One of the really well known and well loved kind of niche actor, kind of cult classic actors. Guy who played Hudson in Aliens, and
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name. But Brett Dalton was in Agents of Shield. I haven't watched the later episodes of Agents of Shield, but I guess that character eventually comes back, and kind of maybe seeks redemption or kind of. But anyway, he's the voice of the Witness. They recast Ikora Ray, who has in the past been played by Gabriella Reese. I think I have that name right. But
Bill Paxton was
yes, Bill Paxton. Yeah, so he was a protege and understudy of Bill Paxton, who wound up being the leader of Hydra inside of Shield and brought Shield down. But Ikora Ray has also been. I think I'm dumping actor names now, so I'm showing the atrophying of my movie cred as I've shifted more to games. But she's Lawrence Fishburne's former wife, played Zoe on Firefly, and was the big bad on season 4 of Angel. I want to say season 4 or season 5. And so she has, previously been the voice of Ikora Ray. She has been recast. I don't know this actress's name, but Mara Juno. Nolan North is obviously the voice of the Ghost. So Destiny 2 has always had some pretty stacked voice talent. I think in the original voice of the Ghost was, again, I'm going to dump his name, but the guy who was... Great Scott! I forget he was the Lannister or whatever on Game of Thrones, and was kind of one of the principal characters throughout the whole show. I got to look all these characters up. I should have prepped a little bit more before the show. Now, like I said, I'm dumping all my movie knowledge. But yeah, so Nolan North and Brett Dalton. So you have some kind of famous voice actors, which was kind of to me was kind of the original inception of the notion of meta in this most recent iteration, was kind of the infiltration of kind of Hollywood talent into animated movies, and then eventually now into video games. So that's what I participated in to fulfill the assignment.
Was it Season of the Haunted? Is that the new season of Destiny? Or maybe that's a different one.
I don't know. I saw it for 5 seconds right before we jumped on the show.
Right. I was just trying to look real quick, but I can't really find anything concrete. So maybe that was a different season or something. All right, cool. Well, you're not alone this time in the picks plays, because I picked Fortnite. So that's even more of a softball throw, I think. But I mean, besides the. You got the skins, obviously. We've had Marvel skins, we've had DC skins, we've had movie, we've had Bad Boy from Bad Boys, we had Will Smith from Bad Boys, which is kind of odd. Just kind of they threw that one out there. We've had Terminator and Predator and all these kind of things. There's that side of the movie, and kind of cross media IPs that are merging together. Obviously, you got The Rock now; he's one of the major characters in the storyline throughout this last couple seasons or few seasons. But then you have the other side of it, where they do kind of these concerts, and not just they've done the big concerts like Ariana Grande and Travis Scott, and it was the first one they did. Marshmello, I think it was the very first concert they did actually in game. But then they kind of have this other mode. It's kind of like their party mode, where you can run around with people and you don't really, you're not killing each other. You have, I think it's almost like a paintball type of thing that you can do to people, or just kind of goof around. But they have actually constant concerts in there with and a lot of the people here I don't really know, because I think they're more like DJs, or more kind of I don't know what the style of music would be called now. What I would have called it back in the day was progressive, that kind of music, or kind of more dancey club kind of music, that you find in the clubs. So they always have those concerts going in this party mode, and I think Fortnite's, for what it is, for what it started as and has become, it's always becoming something else. And even kind of crossing over with, or not crossing over, but kind of, I want to say borrowing from other games, the different modes and stuff, and even just like the UI changes, constantly, and uh, this last iteration of the UI, when you go into the mode section, it looks, and I think I mentioned this before, it looks very similar to Roblox, where it's just kind of the lines of, rows of the different game modes, and different categories. They break them down into as you kind of like scroll down the screen. So it's just become like this big media monster, basically. I think what some people might call it. But I still enjoy the game. I still like just going into battle royale. Now they have the the no builds mode, so there's no building at all. You're just shooting, and they've incorporated all these other abilities now that you can do now that you can't build, and kind of hide behind cover and stuff like that. So you kind of do have all these other things, but just like it's just kind of crazy. Just if you think about it, just like all the different, even just the skins and stuff that you can become, and play. Maybe one day they can kind of incorporate like the different powers, from the different comic book characters and stuff like that. But now it's pretty much, you're just shooting guns and using grenades and stuff like that. But every once in a while they'll throw, like, they had Spider-Man's web shooters in their last season. Um, they've had like when they had the Mandalorian, they had his not just a rocket, like his little jetpack thing, but they had his gun too in there, his little sniper gun that you can use in game. But I'm kind of hoping, like I said, maybe in the future they can incorporate all these abilities, and maybe not like in a main mode, but they can do one of the like limited time modes or something, where that you can have all these powers in one shot. And they did kind of do that with the Avengers. What was this for? Infinity War, maybe, maybe even Endgame. No, I think it was for Infinity War when that came out. They had like a mode with all the Avengers power, or most of the Avengers powers. You had Thor's hammer and Cap's shield and Hawkeye's air bow and arrow, and just kind of different things like that you're able to use in there. You had to pick them up, but still you can use those. And it's just kind of cool when they put those kind of modes in there. I don't know, maybe they can build a game somehow around it. Do like a what was that storyline they had? It was a Battle World or something like that. I know they kind of did it through Secret Wars too, where they had all the heroes kind of fight, and villains kind of fighting each other. And that was back in I think like in the 80s, that the Secret Wars one. Have something like that where you just have all these powers just going at it, and just do something like that. Or maybe just like make a whole game like around DC or Marvel or even Star Wars or something, where using all these abilities. Well, they've had obviously lightsabers too within the game, but that can be a little overpowered sometimes, because I mean, like, especially in the build modes, you can you're taking a build down like in just a couple swipes. I think even they had like one swipe. So if you just like knock down the bottom layer of someone's build, the whole thing's coming down. So then they nerfed it eventually, but they just have those kind of things. So it just keeps growing and evolving, which is, I think that's why I like the game so much. Like, I keep going back to it. And just keep playing. Other than obviously I got I buy the battle pass, like I mentioned, because I save up the V-Bucks, and I just buy each season battle pass. So I want to go through the battle pass and get the different skins. But just because it's always changing too, though, I love kind of just going back and see what they put in there. Sometimes they're hits, sometimes there's misses, but for the most part, they're pretty spot on for what they do. So even though I mean, just forum and Twitter, trolls and stuff like that obviously are always going to kind of hate on it, and just because it's the big thing, and it's been the big thing for years now, which is and I think that's kind of the same thing with how Call of Duty was. Back in the day, it was it was cool to hate on Call of Duty, but even that's grown leaps and bounds. And they've had skins in that in there too, in the Warzone, and not so much the normal multiplayer, but I know like in Warzone they had Rambo, and they had John John McClane from Die Hard, from Bruce Willis's character, and all these other ones.
That was a regular multiplayer too. In fact, I think that those are. I think that those are actually. I mean, I may have it wrong, but I actually think that those were. I mean, they were Cold War content that was crossed over into Warzone, because Cold War was an '80s motif thing, and those characters were like from that time. So I just remember them being. They were brought in a very specific season of Cold War, and then I think from there they were usable models and skins that you could use in Warzone also.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that makes sense now. Now that you mention it, yeah. So those would be in there. But yeah, you always have these, these games like just doing this nowadays. So it's just kind of cool that we have this going on. Even like Rocket League, they'll put like different cars and like they've had Kit from Knight Rider and the Ghostbusters car and all these other different cars. So it's just kind of cool, just kind of see those in there and just kind of kind of geek out. So um, all right, so that was our picks plays.
Well,
Unless you had any,
well,
I would say unless you had any comments.
yeah. Well, I just wanted to also, it's also timely and just in this assignment in the conversation of like I said again, the use of the label meta, I think, is way overly, but by the same token, all of the lash back over it from the gaming community on social media, I think, is also way extra and hardly necessary. The meta's always existed. There's always been variants of it. I don't think it's some super confusing, strategy. It's just, it's just crossing your IP over to different entertainment mediums, right? And it's really coming to rise because of the Kevin Feige thing in the MCU. And so, right, when we look at a lot of the things that are being laid out, you look at what Xbox is trying to do with its 23 studios, which will be 30 studios next year, right? And trying to orchestrate that whole thing and have games as standalone, products, but also have a streaming service. But then also, right, putting some of those properties off into television like Halo. That's just the Kevin Feige thing that they're trying to orchestrate, right? And, and now Sony's going to be trying to do the same thing, because I think, again, the thing that's timely is, in conjunction with the other things that you mentioned before, the other thing that they've announced is that Sony will now have a Horizon Zero Dawn. There's a Horizon Zero Dawn and like 2 other IPs that they're pushing over into television as well. So, again, you're going to kind of see those characters again. Then the last thing I want to mention, I want to redeem myself from all my mistakes that I made. So it's Peter Dinklage was the name that I dropped about Game of Thrones. But the other thing that's really hilarious is I said Gabriella Reese for the voice of Cora Ray. It's Gina Torres, who's the ex-wife of Larry Fishburne, who was the voice of Ikora Ray, I think, for Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, and then was recently replaced in the season of The Splicer. But the funny thing is I said that it was Gabriella Reese. Gabriella Reese was a professional beach volleyball player from the 1990s who also then crossed over and became an MTV VJ and took over MTV Sports from Dan Cortese. So I don't know where in the world in my weird, boggled brain full of useless information that I pulled that name out of, but that's a thing. So yeah, I think that was the only, and yes, it is Season of the Haunted is the new season of Destiny 2.
Okay, nice. All right, so let's jump out of the picks plays for now, at least. We got a new one coming up here at the end of the show that we're talking about, and jump into some more games here as we close out the show. Looks like you have a couple here on the docket, Mr. Logic.
Yeah, I'll do these as quick hits, and I'll really talk more about like what the games kind of are than the amount of time I've spent in them, because I haven't spent a ton of time. Old World is a new game that is out from an independent studio. It's available on Steam and I think some other places, but it is a 4X game that has received a lot of critical review in the terms of feeling that it's actually better than Civilization, than the Civ series. So the Civ series is a classic, but eventually, it was going to be overtaken by some new series because the medium continues to evolve, the art form continues to evolve, and you would think that eventually somebody would do something better than Civ. And so Old World is a 4X game. One of the knocks against it that I have is, at least played on an HDR monitor, the color palette is there's not a ton of contrast to it and not a ton of differentiation in the colors. It's a very brown game when you're looking at a lot of the terrain. And so it's really difficult to kind of pick your units out on the screen. And so I find that I have to really dedicatingly use the cycle units function just to go into a text-based menu and kind of force the text to cycle around all my units. But it's pretty neat. It has the element of that I really like in games like this since Total War Rome came around, which is that you can kind of manage your family tree, which is another aspect that I like in like Crusader Kings 3. And so you can marry members of your family off. You can use that to create alliances. There are penalties and things that happen if your main character dies at a point where they don't have an heir. And so I like incorporating that dynamic into it as well. So I haven't played enough. I haven't spent enough time in it to really see like the timeline advance, and kind of see how like the research tree and the advancement through the ages kind of impacts the game. But I've started it. It is fairly neat. Definitely has a hook on me, and I'm definitely going to be spending more time with it. I've also been spending time with V Rising, which has been getting a lot of buzz on the internet. It is a very Diablo-esque kind of game. It is in early access, which is another significant thing for me because I never play early access games. I definitely don't ever pay for early access games. But another fellow podcaster from another show kind of turned me on to this, and I did go ahead. It was only $20 to get in on early access. It is a Diablo-esque game, but what you do is you play as a vampire. And so, there's a bunch of lore and background story to it, and you rise and, you can follow a branching character tree and kind of pick, what powers you want to develop and stuff. So theoretically, people would have different vampire builds. I think what's most unique about this game is just kind of it's kind of MMO-esque, always online-esque variables to it. So you can you can build an alliance that typically has you work in an alliance of up to 4 vampires in kind of a clan. There are public servers that you can participate in that will have multiple clans on them, multiple groups on them, trying to, there's a build aspect to it, so you do build kind of forts and then castles, and then eventually you kind of own territory. And so there's that aspect going on in these servers. There are PvP servers. You do not have to go into the PvP server, so that's one of the things I don't like. I don't like always on PvP. So you have PvE servers that you can participate in. You can deploy your own server. You can password protect that server. You can play on a public server, but then password protect it so that only your friends can be invited to that server. So it has a lot of different options. The news story that we wanted to bring up as well is they also just rolled out the ability to play offline. So you can play on an instance, again, that's entirely under your control, and then take it offline so that it doesn't even have to be online. But while you are offline, it's a bit of a misnomer, but so you can be disconnected from kind of their server centralized infrastructure, but still play in kind of a LAN mode, where you have friends who are able to IP in to the instance. So it just creates a ton of variables and a ton of different ways for you to play the game. If you do want to play completely single player, you can just play in that totally offline instance and not be, connected to the mothership and have to worry about updates and, not being able to play the game. So it's pretty neat. It's gotten a lot of growth right off the bat. It's already sold 1 million copies kind of in its first week, I think, of deployment. So it was ranked up in concurrent players for a while. Again, I wouldn't get overly joyed about a game like that, in those type of statistics, because they all burn hot coming out of the gate. What remains to be seen is kind of how the game performs over the next, 2, 3, 6 months. But there's enough there to interest me as far as it being kind of a Diablo-like game, while we're sitting here waiting for Diablo 4. And I'll see if people want to participate in it, just play some co-op. While we're currently waiting on co-op to show up in Halo Infinite, it presents another option, right, to get in and play some with your friends. And like I said, has some kind of deep lore and some kind of MMO-esque aspects to it. I haven't really uncorked how what the continuing content is behind it, the games as a service, live service kind of model. I think it's oriented around this notion of content expansions that you will pay for as individual packs, that will somehow grant additional content into the instances. I don't know if that's additional campaigns or if it's additional monsters or what. I think there is one DLC pack out that's available now. So, but it looks like that's what it's going to be. Maybe it's going to kind of be a Destiny 2 like model where they periodically release additional narrative content or something like that you could participate in. But I think that's the most interesting thing, is it just gives you a ton of different ways to approach how you want to play and how you want to play with friends.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of talk about this game on one of the other servers I'm on, Discord servers I'm on, and then just on Twitter in general. So I don't know. I'll have to take a look at it. I haven't really seen anything on it yet. I didn't have a chance. I've just been super busy this past couple weeks, so I definitely want to take a look at it. And I don't know. You mentioned how there's DLC, and I always just find it kind of weird when you have like a game preview game, or one of these games coming out, coming out with DLC, even though the game's technically not available yet. Well, officially released yet. So I always just get a laugh out of those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, people will have to keep an eye out to see if they get arced, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it's I didn't buy the DLC. I didn't see the need to, so I paid my $20 to play get in on early access, and if I play the game for a chunk of time for the entrance fee of for the cover charge of $20, then that's certainly less than the price of a full price game, and it's a working game. It's not a Star Citizen, so I think that's reasonable and fair, at least for now.
Yeah, that's always a worry too with the game preview, or those pre-release games where they could just wipe the game, or wipe your your progress and stuff like that, which has happened. And I knew going in with Arc, that could happen, that would happen. So and it did happen. So I kind of just dropped it until the official release. So speaking of which. Speaking of Arc, this is one of my games that I put down here on my list. So I'm still plugging away at it. It's been like a month and a half now, I think. So it's like my new Call of Duty. So it's like my game that I have to play every day. And so before I was kind of taming different animals and building a base building. I've dropped off on now, at least for now. And I was taming different animals. I'm actually still kind of taming animals, but now I've kind of gone into the breeding side. Because when you breed them, you can get like more powerful animals, and you kind of have to do that to go through the bosses of the game, which I think there's like on each map there's probably like 4 or 5. I think you have to. It's like a whole thing you have to do to get to the bosses too, just in general. So you kind of have to you know breed these animals to get these powerful variants, and take them to the boss, and and then you can pretty much defeat it, kind of easy peasy. So that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to breed the different animals, and just it's kind of cool too. Like, and this wasn't in the original game, where the animals have different colors now. Like as you breed them, they like I think I've had like 4 different they're called Argentavis. It's kind of like a big like hawk basically. And sometimes it comes out just like one of the parents, other times it's like just completely different color and just different designs, or not like color design, I should say. So color patterns on these animals. So it's kind of cool. So I'm just trying to go through. I've got like 3 T-Rexes now, and like a bunch of Argentavis, because those things like just breed like crazy. They're fairly short as far as from when they hatch and going up to the adult. So it probably takes like a couple days, maybe a day. So that's the other thing too, kind of just with taming. It takes time. It hatches and it's a baby, and then it goes to an adolescent, and then a juvenile, and then it's finally an adult. So there's different stages. So that's kind of cool. But every once in a while, Arc will have like, I think just last week or the weekend before they had like the 2-time taming and experience and all this other thing, and they throw those kind of like 2-time things, kind of like on shooters and stuff like that. They do that sometimes, where it accelerates what you're doing, trying to do in the game. So I'm having fun with that. But yeah, I'm a breeder now, so I'm doing that. And then my final game is Rocket League. I just threw that in there just because I kind of with Arc, like I haven't really had a chance to play a lot, but I've jumped back into that mostly on the Switch. Sometimes I'll play on the Xbox also. But on the flip side too, I've been playing a lot of the Rocket League mobile Sideswipe, I believe it's called on there. So I've been doing a lot of that, and they actually introduced I think it's a 3-on-3 now on Sideswipe on the mobile side, where they kind of extend. So it's just like a side-to-side map when you're playing normally. So, and they only had like a single and a duo game mode. Now they have 3-on-3 trio. and they kind of extended out the map because they kind of had to, because since there's no depth or anything really that you can go in and out of, like a normal arc or a normal Rocket League, they extended the sides, so you can kind of see, like, they'll show like an arrow for like the ball and like at least your teammates, so you can kind of see like a little arrows, so you can kind of see where they're at and see what's going on. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of something a little different. And just like in the regular game, they throw like limited time modes. Like they've had kind of like a volleyball type of game mode, which is actually kind of cool. And then of course they rotate those out, so that one's gone. And I think this 3-on-3 is actually permanent, I believe, if I read the description correctly. So hopefully they'll bring something else on, eventually. But those are the only two games I've really been playing other than on Fortnite. Just haven't had a whole bunch of time to jump into anything, and just being tired after work and family stuff. So just want to kind of some chill games. So anything else you wanted to mention, or any comments on anything?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right, cool. All right, that's pretty much the end of the show. Let's jump into our picks plays. So it's June, or it's going to be June, without E3, with lots of game announcements. We got Summer Game Fest, IGN Summer of Gaming, Microsoft Showcase coming up a couple weeks, along with others. I'll promise lots of new games and returning IPs. And I believe PlayStation had their State of Play, I think they're going to do too, soon. I can't remember. I forgot what the date was for that one.
I don't think they've announced a date. So they have a day.
Okay.
They have a Day of Play sale that's going on right now, which a lot of people are reading the tea leaves and believing that is, in conjunction with the fact that it's just summer and they're due, with the notion that they'll do a State of Play. But I don't think anything's been officially announced yet.
Okay. So choose an IP, genre, or game with a specific mechanic that you hope to see connections to during all the game announcements. Play it and discuss why it should be revisited or returned to. By the time our report occurs at the end of June, we'll know if there's a game announcement that connects. 3 is talk about it, or talk about how. If not, talk about why there should be. So I believe that was DB, I think, had put this one in there. I just saw it like not too long after we started, or before we started the show, so I don't know what I'm going to play yet. I'm actually kind of thinking maybe a fighting game, because I know there's been talks about the next maybe Mortal Kombat or whatever. I forgot the name of the studio. NetherRealms is working on, but I think everybody's been speculating that's Mortal Kombat 12 more than likely, because I think they already announced that they're not working on a new. I'm blanking on the DC game, the fighting game that they were working on, that they made the last couple ones. But I think they had already announced that they haven't been working on that one at all. So more than likely it's a Mortal Kombat game. Maybe it's something new. So we'll have to see. So I'm thinking maybe a fighting game I'll jump into. Maybe I already beat actually Mortal Kombat 11, which is I think the last game, at least story-wise, that I beat. But I might go back to 9 because I do have that still back on. I think I got it on sale at some point. So I might go back and kind of finish that story. So we'll see.
Yeah, so
any ideas?
No, but I think you're talking about the Injustice series.
Injustice, yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to. I unfortunately don't pay enough attention to some of the live in-person events, and I'm wondering. I'm sure Bungie has done some type of Destiny 2 con at some point, but although it may be a cheat since I used Destiny 2 to fulfill the last assignment, I may very well be using Destiny 2 for this one as well. But I want to see if there's any type of summertime like event. Or I know they've done some kind of fire team thing or something back when they used to do stuff in person, and so I'm sure there's some virtual event that they'll be doing now, but I don't know when in the year that happens.
Yeah.
But it might be that.
Did they usually do something with Sony back when they were actually conferences, like in-person conferences?
I don't remember, but
or announced it during like Sony stuff.
I thought since they've broken away that there was some type of. I thought I've seen references in different forums and stuff to some type of, and on Twitter to some type of event that they do. But I gotta look that up. Yeah, so it might be Destiny 2, but it might be something else that I formulate over the month between now and then.
Yep. Yeah, we got a whole month, so go ahead and ponder that picks playlist. All right, so that is it. Thank you, Game Logic, for joining me tonight. Any other last words you have before we head out?
No, man. Join us next week.
Cool. Yep. Please join us next week. Hopefully, DB will be back on as he's supposed to host next week. But if not, one of us will, of course, be hosting. So please take care of each other out there. And let us know if there's anything you want us to play. Maybe we have picks plays maybe in the future that you want us to do. Thank you once again, Game Logic, and we will see you all next time.